Okay, so you have made a resume, you've made a cover letter, you've made a portfolio. Now it's time to actually use all that stuff and go into a job interview. Now, job interviews are scary. They're kind of meant to be scary, unfortunately. But the thing about interviews is that the more that you practice and the more that you do them, the better that you get at them. So if you're in my class, that's the idea behind the mock interview, is just to get you some practice and to be able to give you some feedback when there's no job at stake and the outcome doesn't necessarily matter that much. So what I'm going to do is take you through an interview from the very beginning until you walk out the door, and give you some different tips and things like that. So here we go. So usually the first question people ask is, what do I bring to an interview? So you absolutely want to make sure that you bring your portfolio. Typically as a woman, what I bring is my portfolio, which is a binder, and then I have another folder, and then I carry a very small purse. In that folder, I have about usually 12 to 15 copies of my resume, and that has to be on the fancy paper. And the reason that I bring so many is because I have no idea how many people are going to be in the interview room. It could be a one-on-one, it could be a panel, so I would rather take them home than be stuck without them, because you have to give one to every person in the room. The other thing that's in my folder is my list of references, and I usually bring several copies of that, but not nearly as many as the resume, because you usually don't give out as many of those. Also in my folder is a list of questions that I'm going to ask the interviewer at the end of the interview, and we're going to get to some, and I'll show you some questions that you can ask. Outside of that folder, some things that are in that small purse is I bring my driver's license, and I either bring a checkbook or I bring just a blank check that's not signed, because if you get hired on the spot, the blank check is usually if they're going to do direct deposit, and usually they need your driver's license number to put on your tax forms and stuff like that. Inside my folder, I always have a steno pad and pen just in case I want to take any notes during the interview, which is totally okay to do. And in my car, I have directions, the place's phone number, and the name of the person I'm going to be interviewing with, just in case I get lost, and so that when I get there, I can say I have a meeting with so-and-so and not look like an idiot because I don't know what their name is. So that's the stuff you're going to bring. The next question that always happens is, what do I wear? Your appearance and your handshake are the two most influential nonverbal things that happen during a job interview. So at a job interview, you absolutely have to wear a suit in your first interview, because it's the first time you're meeting these people. It's the first impression that you get to make, and a first impression goes a really, really long way. So and don't go out and buy a suit. It will cost you a fortune. Buy separates. So I have suit jackets from Old Navy. I have suit jackets from JCPenney. I have trouser pants from Kohl's and Target and Penny's, and New York and Company, because they give a teacher discount. So these are not things that you're going to be you should spend a fortune on. And for you guys, you really only need to have 2 pairs of pants and maybe 2 suit jackets eventually. And the reason for that is so that you can kind of mix and match if they call you back for a second interview. Colors that are going to work really, really well are black pants, gray pants, same for the suit jackets, or black or gray pinstripe pants. And those are staples in my closet. So let's say I wear the black pants and the black suit jacket to the first interview, and they call me back for a second interview, then I can wear my gray suit. So it actually looks like I have more clothes than I might. But you guys only really need this kind of apparel for when you're going to be going on interviews, so don't go shopping crazy. It's going to be really important that you wear shoes that you could walk in. I've seen women try and wear heels to interviews and they can't walk in heels, so wear flats, that's fine. You don't want to wear anything hoochie. And it doesn't matter what size the suit wear says, it matters that it fits. So I don't want to be able to know what kind of underwear you're wearing because of the clothes are too big or the clothes are too tight. Now, when you wear a suit jacket, when your arm, it should button, and when your arms are down by your side, the sleeves should fall right where the knuckle of your thumb is. That's a good way to judge if the suit jacket fits. Now, there's a lot of hemming tape out there. You can get it at fabric stores and Walmart and stuff like that, but basically it's kind of like double-sided tape, and you make the hem and then you put the piece of tape there. So if you get a suit jacket that fits you everywhere else but the arms are a little too long, just tuck up the end of the sleeve and then use that hemming tape, and it could work really well. Ladies, make sure that whatever shirt that you pick to go underneath the suit jacket, you do a cleavage check, and you know what I mean by this. You stand in front of the mirror and you bend over, and if you can see too much, then you either need to get a higher collared shirt or you need to put a cami on underneath it. There's a big misconception that you have to wear a button-down shirt underneath a suit jacket, and that's not the case. I have a very hard time finding button-down shirts, so I wear other shirts that still look professional. And if you're worried about, well, God, I sweat a lot. If I wear a long-sleeve shirt under the suit jacket, I'm really going to be sweating. Especially for girls, you can wear a tank top underneath your suit jacket, but it should be one where the width of the tank top is the entire width of your shoulder, or you wear a shirt that has cap sleeves. So just in case you take your suit jacket off, you still look professional in whatever shirt that you're wearing. But I never wear a long sleeve underneath a suit jacket because I get way too warm. Guys, you probably can't avoid the button-down shirt and tie thing. Sometimes guys try and put a polo shirt underneath a suit jacket, but in a job interview, you really shouldn't do that. Sorry. But you can wear a short sleeve button-down shirt underneath the suit jacket, again, if you're worried about being way too warm. Okay, if you are someone who knows that when you get nervous you turn really red, or maybe you get blotchy, the shirt color underneath the suit jacket, you want to avoid reds, yellows, and oranges because they're just going to make you look that much redder. So avoid those colors. If you are pale, avoid yellow. If you have a darker color to your skin, yellows and pale pinks, pale blue, they can really make your complexion stand out wonderfully. Finally, make sure that whatever you pick to wear, you iron. And I know that this sounds silly, but make sure that you actually use an umbrella. Because remember back in like high school when it wasn't cool to use an umbrella and you would just like throw a hood up and run to wherever you had to go? Well, I had somebody do that when they came in for an interview, and their hair was soaked, their shoulders were soaked, his back was soaked, and it looked stupid, like he should have known better. So get an umbrella. Okay, so let's start with girls. We'll go to boys in a minute. But these are just some different interview outfit examples. Now, I didn't talk about skirts. I personally don't wear skirts to job interviews because if you wear a skirt to a job interview, you need to make sure that your knees are clenched tightly throughout the entire interview. I did a mock interview once and a student wore a skirt, and she looked nice, but the longer the interview went on, the wider and wider her knees got, and it was really gross. So if you are going to wear a skirt, here's where your hemline should hit right below your knee, because then when you sit down, it's only going to go up to about here, so this way it doesn't look hoochie. Regardless of whether you're wearing pants or a skirt, you are never crossing your legs. This uncomfortable woman is how you are going to be sitting, with your feet flat on the floor, with your butt in the curve of the chair, straight back, shoulders up, hands on your lap with something small on your lap. And that's about it. You don't want to carry anything that's too bulky. You want to keep your makeup really conservative. Make sure your tattoos are covered. Some of you, and this is more obviously for the girls, I've seen some of you who have tattoos on your feet. You want to make sure that you either cover the tattoo with makeup or you wear a dark enough sock so that you can't see the tattoo. Because unfortunately, a lot of people still judge people based on tattoos, so keep them covered in the first interview. As far as jewelry, no facial piercings at all. Take out the tongue ring, take out the nose ring. If you have multiple piercings in your ears, just use one piercing, and don't make the earring too huge. And be selective in your jewelry. So if you're going to wear earrings, you don't wear a necklace. If you wear a necklace, it's going to be something simple and there's no earrings. You're not wearing a lot of rings. If you wear a watch, don't throw a bracelet on the other wrist. You want to keep it very minimalistic. Now, over here it says blouses should be cotton or silk and white or pastel. I don't agree with that. Some of us buy polyester because it's a whole lot cheaper and hey, it fits, big deal. But if you are wearing a skirt, you absolutely do have to wear pantyhose underneath it. Sorry, hate to break it to you. These right here are called trouser pants, and trouser pants are pants that are the way that they're cut is they look good on any body style, and they're actually called trouser pants. The reason why is you can see that this leg, it's the same width from the top of the thigh all the way down to the bottom, so it doesn't flare out, it's not a bell bottom, this is more of a straight leg. But this style pant is flattering on everybody. If you notice this seam up the middle, that is supposed to be there, so don't try and iron that out. But I want to draw your attention to her hem. So if you look at this foot, because that's where you could see it at an angle, if you notice there's about an inch or two, usually 2 inches of the shoe that's poking out. That's what you want to have happen. You don't want your pants to drag. So you want them, that's about where you want them to stop. And again, you could use that tape to hem them if you're not good at hemming pants. You can wear flats, but again, you have to be careful of where the hem falls. So for her, because it bunches right here, it looks like that they probably drag just a little bit in the back. She's wearing peep toes. I really don't care if you wear peep toes, but don't wear peep toes when they're not weather appropriate, so you shouldn't be wearing peep toes in the winter. For our interview purposes, for the mock interview, if you don't get a suit jacket, doing something like this still works, where you wear a nice sweater. This is obviously way too casual. This is way too ho-ish. But notice how big her purse is and how small her purse is. You want to go for smaller things that you're not going to have to juggle very much. You don't want to be doused in perfume, especially because if you're working in anything medical, you should know that perfumes can trigger asthma attacks, so you want to keep it very light. As far as how your hair is done, I would try and avoid ponytails unless you've done, you know how there's like just the ponytail you threw together, but then there's the nicer ponytail. You could do nicer ponytails, but if I had this lady's hair during the interview, I would be playing with this the whole time. So that means I need to clip this back. You don't want to end up touching your face too much or playing with your hair during a job interview. So you might need to pin it back. Like if I had her hair, I would probably pin the top back, so then this is the only thing hitting my shoulders, and I'm not playing with it very much. Okay, so let's go on to the dudes. Dudes, this is pretty much what you're left with. It's a suit with a shirt and a tie. Typical fashion says that your belt must match your shoes. When you tie your tie, the bottom triangle of the tie should reach the top to middle of your belt. If it's too short or too long, then you need to retie it. For both female and male, if you're going to wear a suit jacket, don't drive in it. It's a really good idea to put it on a hanger, put it in the back seat, and then put the suit jacket on once you get there, because the back of it can get very wrinkled while you're driving. Men, you have to make sure that, and women as well, you have to make sure that you wear things that are called trouser socks. So I'm going to back up 1 second for the girls. Girls, if you're going to wear pants, you have to wear trouser socks or pantyhose underneath your pants. You cannot be barefoot in your shoes. It looks bad. So if you think back to when you were little and you used to wear those white socks with the frill and the patent leather shoes, those are trouser socks, but now they're for adults. All trouser socks come up to about the shin, and that's what you want to wear. Trouser socks are not as thin as pantyhose, but not as thick as normal socks, so they'll still fit in a pair of high heels. Guys, you want to wear trouser socks as well, and you want to wear ones that come up to about your shin. I have had guys who have worn trouser socks, but they're ankle socks, so when they sit down I can see their ankle, and that just looks weird. I also have had some people wear just like regular white sport sock, tube socks, underneath in their shoes, and that just looks bad. So socks actually makes a difference. As far as guys and ironing, see this guy right here? So I had a guy come in for an interview, and he was in a suit like this, buttoned up, very professional. But he came in the summer, and our air conditioning was broken, and it was absolutely scorching in our office. So we told him, unbutton your jacket, feel free to take it off, it's fine. No. We stopped the interview probably 3 or 4 times to ask him if he wanted to take his jacket off. Finally, the poor thing is sweating so much. He finally takes his suit jacket off, and we realized why he didn't want to take it off in the first place. Because he had only ironed right here, which is the part that you could see when the suit jacket's open. He didn't iron the rest of it or the back, so it looked like a mess. He didn't get the job. It didn't have anything to do with his outfit, but it really didn't score any points for him. Guys, you want to make sure that you clean your fingernails, that you are well shaven, that your hair is trimmed, or if it's long, it's at least gelled or neat, and it doesn't look like you just rolled out of bed. Okay, so when to arrive. You should show up to a job interview 10 to 15 minutes before the time of your interview. If you get there any earlier, it looks a little weird, so just sit in your car. But 10 to 15 minutes is a good window just in case they might want to get you back there early. It also shows that you're punctual. You might think that this sounds ridiculous, but don't bring anybody with you to the job interview. I've had several cases where people bring somebody else with them, and I had someone bring their mother with them. One person brought their grandmother. Another one, I thought it was going to be a patient. I didn't even know she was in an interview. I went out into the waiting room, and a girl was sitting across her boyfriend's lap, kissing him, and she was the person I was interviewing. Needless to say, she did not get the job. But probably the most dramatic thing that sticks out in my head when I talk about this is an example of a woman that we were interviewing, and the interview was going pretty well, when all of a sudden there was a knock on the door, and my secretary pulled me out of the interview and said that the woman's son was up at the front. And my secretary had explained that this little boy, probably somewhere, I don't know, I'm not good at guessing ages, but somewhere between 4 and 6-ish, came into our office by himself and said to my secretary, "I need my mommy. My brother doesn't smell good." And my secretary didn't know if this boy's mom was a patient or, an employee. So she said, "What's your mom's name?" And he said, "Mom," because you don't realize that they have names at that point. So she finally figured out that it was the lady in the interview. So I go back into the interview and tell the woman that her son is there and needs her. So we stop the interview. She goes out to the front. It is, in fact, her son. and she says, "I'll be back in a minute," and she leaves the office with her son. Now, we have huge floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the parking lot, so of course we're spying on her to see what the heck is going on. And it's probably September, so it's not too hot, not too cold. And she goes out to a minivan, and there is another baby in there. And we see her through shadows of the windshield change a diaper, put the 4 or 6-year-old back in the van, put the baby who needed the diaper change back in the van, close the van, lock the van, holds the dirty diaper in her hand, comes back up into our office, throws the dirty diaper in our garbage can, and then comes back into the interview. Yeah, so I'm just figuring you're sitting there going, "Are you serious?" Yes, I'm serious. So beside the issues of how could you dare leave your children in the car, the things that popped up in our head were, if you couldn't find a babysitter for the job interview, then how much are these children going to interfere with your job if you're hired? So she did not get the job. You want to make sure that your cell phones are off and away when you're sitting in the waiting room. You're not playing with them. The only time you might need your cell phone is if they want to schedule a second interview and your calendar is on your phone. It's really, really helpful to take a dry run and drive to the place before you have the interview, so this way you can time how long it'll take you to get there, and then add 10 minutes to that. So if it takes you 20 minutes to get to the interview, leave your house 30 minutes in advance, and that will accommodate for any traffic or construction that you might run into. If you are running late, however, you need to call them as soon as you know you're running late. But you don't ever tell them, "Hey, I'll be 20 minutes late, see you later." The correct way to approach that is you let them know that you're running late, but you ask if it is still okay to come or if you should reschedule. Asking is much more courteous, and it's you're keeping their schedule in mind, because you don't know what other appointments they might have after you. So make sure you ask and not demand. Okay, so once you get there, you're sitting in the waiting room, and that is when your interview starts, because people are spying on you. Trust me, I used to send spies to sit in the front office and watch these people to see what they did when they didn't think they were being watched. So you're going to be sitting in that chair the same way that uncomfortable lady in the skirt was sitting, with your feet flat, back straight, shoulders up, hands on your lap. You are not looking at your phone. You are not reading magazines. You should be looking at your resume and your portfolio, and that's it. The idea is that as soon as they call you, you want to be able to grab your stuff and just get up and walk. You don't want to have to put anything down, put something back in your purse, or fidget with anything, because if they call your name and you make them wait, they will start walking down the hallway without you, and then that just adds to your anxiety. So you want to be ready to get up and move. Do not smoke. My nervous smokers, or just my smokers, you are not smoking before a job interview, because those of us who don't smoke can smell it very easily. And if you smoke and then douse yourself in perfume, we'll be able to tell that too. So chew some nicotine gum, wear a patch, do one of those e-cigarettes, but do something different so that you don't smell like cigarette smoke. If you're worried about your breath, you are not allowed to chew gum during a job interview, but what you can do is get like a mini Altoid, something small, so that you could chew it real quick and not have it in your mouth when you're actually doing the interview, because it'll get in the way when you're talking. If for some reason you have to use the bathroom while you're there, which hopefully you don't, just let someone know where you went. But you really don't want to keep the interviewer waiting if you can avoid it at all. But sometimes people's nerves kick in and they have to hit the bathroom before the interview. Okay, so let's talk handshake. So you're sitting in the waiting room. I come out to call you to interview you, and you walk up to me, and the handshake is the first thing that happens. I had mentioned before that what you're wearing and how you shake someone's hand are the two most important nonverbal cues that happen during a job interview. So in the next slide, I'm actually going to show you how you're going to shake someone's hand. But the stronger of a handshake that you have, the more confident you come across. And by stronger, I don't mean you squeeze the living daylights out of them. By a strong handshake, I mean that you look them in the eye, you're smiling, your handshake is firm but not crushing, and you're confident. So the times when you need to shake hands are when you first meet the interviewer. If you go into the room that you're being interviewed and there are more people in there, you shake everybody's hand and you introduce yourself to everybody, even though it sounds and feels a little bit awkward. And then you do the same exact thing before you leave. You shake everybody's hand and the interviewer's hand before you leave. Now, if you're someone who, when you get nervous, your hands get really sweaty, when you're getting dressed that morning, this is going to sound silly, but it actually works. Take your deodorant and rub your deodorant on the palms and on your fingers and stand there for a few minutes and let it dry, and don't wash your hands for a couple minutes. The deodorant will actually help keep the sweatiness down. Now, if you're about to leave the interview and your hands are sweating, still shake everybody's hand just as confident as if there was no sweat on your hands. Don't wipe the sweat off. People see that stuff. Just deal with it and wipe your hands after you leave the room. So let me show you some steps on how to actually shake a hand. So the first thing, again, you want to make sure that you look them in the eye and smile the whole time you're doing it. That's going to convey warmth and some of your personality. So even if you're left-handed, you are going to shake hands with your right hand, because that's, I don't know why, just kind of culturally how everybody shakes hands. So your arm is going to be at a 90-degree angle. See how hers is just slightly bent at the elbow. She's not like reaching across the room for the person like this guy is. So it's just a 90-degree angle, and you want to keep your elbow kind of tucked along your side. You don't need to do the chicken wing thing like this guy and make it a ghetto handshake. This is the part that's a little difficult to describe, but basically what you want to do is, if you hold your hand in front of you, the web that's between your thumb and your pointer finger, that's going to interlock with their web when you go in for the handshake, and your thumb will kind of curl over, just like this. The other four fingers are going to wrap around the person's, the soft part of the person's hand near their pinky, but will not include the pinky. So see how this guy's pinky is not included in these fingers? Now, a lot of people think that the pressure in a handshake comes from the thumb, and that's where you actually end up crushing somebody. The pressure in a handshake is actually going to come from those bottom four fingers, and you just need to apply slight pressure, and you really don't need to squeeze your thumb that much. The suggestion, now up here it says 3 to 4. I wrote 2, but you just want to do 2 to 3 quick pumps up and down. I had someone once shake my hand side to side. It was very weird. But just shake their hand. Twice is usually enough. Once, twice, let go. That's enough time to say, hi, how are you? It's nice to meet you, whatever, and let go. Otherwise, you're not standing there shaking each other's hands forever. But you don't want to crush. You want to find a happy medium between crushing and jellyfish hand. So normally, if we were in class right now, I'd have you practice on each other and with me. So if someone's in the room with you, practice your handshake right now. I know it seems silly, but go on. Do it. Do it. And read this picture that I stole off Google. Okay, so here are just some body language do's and don'ts. And most of these we've talked about, and all of the images in this PowerPoint I stole off Google, and I am telling you this so you know that I'm not plagiarizing. Even though, look, haha, there's a citation down there. Anyway, you only want to carry one item, so that's kind of what we were talking about with just the portfolio and folder. Your shoes do matter. You want to be careful of how you sit. You don't want to be chewing gum. You don't want to be touching your hair and your face constantly. That's a sign of nerves. Even if you are nervous, you got to find another way to deal with it. Not fidget, not play with the pen that's in your hand. One thing that I do is I actually push my cuticles back, because then my hands are still on my lap, but I'm just making very slight movements, and that's how I deal with nerves sometimes. Do not cross your arms in front of you. It shows that you just really don't care about what's happening. And it is okay to smile. It is okay to, appropriately use humor and giggle or laugh where it's appropriate, but to do it constantly is just a little creepy. Okay, so you were in the waiting room. I called you back. You shook my hand, and now we have to walk down to the interview room. So now we need to do something called small talk. And small talk can really, really work to your advantage in a job interview, because it's a place where it could ease your nerves a little bit. You get to feel them out, they get to feel you out, and you get to let some of your personality show before those tough questions start coming at you. So you really want to make sure that you smile here. Now, the thing is that when someone is leading you to where the interview room is going to be, you always want to make sure that you kind of hang back one pace and let them lead you. So you kind of want to be on the side of them, but, not taking the lead. Imagine you're driving a car, and you know where another car's blind spot is? That's where you kind of want to be standing when you're walking back with these people. Here are some appropriate topics that you can talk about. The weather is always a very safe topic. Compliment how nice the office is, how great it looks, how clean it is, how wonderful the staff is. Even if you don't mean it, it's the art of bullshitting. You can talk about how easy the office was to find. Even if you're lying, that's okay. Talking about the weather and finding ways to compliment the facility are great things that you could use for small talk. And believe it or not, you're being judged on your small talk, or lack thereof. I've had people where I've tried to start small talk, and it's just dead silence. And usually the person who is going to do the interview with you, they'll start the small talk. So you won't have to start it. But, if you are just dead silent because you're so nervous, then it's really weird. And we judge you on your small talk because small talk is going to be a part of your everyday job. You have to make small talk with patients, with their families, with the UPS driver, with people on the phone, sales reps, things like that. So small talk is a big deal. I hope you're not too nervous so far. And there are different types of interviews that can happen. So when the door finally opens and you go into the interview room, do not panic. There might just be it could just be the person who escorted you. It might be one other person in the room. The biggest panel interview I ever had was 12 people, and that was nerve-wracking, but I did it and it was fine. But you always want to make sure that you sit last. So the person who escorted you in, or if there's anybody else who's standing, you can stand in front of the chair, but don't sit down until everybody else sits down. It's just a sign of respect. And then just take a deep breath, a very deep breath, and get ready to start answering the questions that they're going to ask you. But you have to remember that in a job interview, you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So you're watching to make sure that they're asking you ethical questions and legal questions. And when you're answering questions, be honest. I would rather someone be honest and tell me they're comfortable or uncomfortable with something rather than lie, and then I have them do it and they can't do it. So honesty is good. Okay, so here are some different kinds of job interviews that can happen. One-on-one and panel, you guys are pretty used to. A second interview is very, very common. Usually what happens is a first interview, you interview all the candidates you like, and then a second interview is when you've kind of weeded down the applicant pool and you want to meet a couple people again. A second interview is typically where benefits, days off, reimbursement, salary, things like that are spoken about. It's never done at a first interview. Now, there are other kinds of job interviews. A working interview is super, super popular, and some people might do that at a second interview or at a third interview, and it's where you come in and you work for the day. And even though you might be nervous about a working interview because, yes, they're watching you, a working interview can really work to your advantage because then you can see if you jive with the other people in the office. I've done a group interview once, and it was the most bizarre thing that I had ever done. I went expecting it to be a one-on-one interview, so I'm in a suit and the whole 9 yards, and everybody else is in jeans. And they brought us in a room, and the people, I think it was an insurance company, but the interview was the people telling us what the job was about, what it would consist of, what would happen, yada, 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 to a group of about 20 of us. So none of us spoke. If we were interested in the job, then the next phase would be to take a test. If we weren't interested in the job, we were free to leave and never had to talk to them again. I was free to leave, and I never talked to them again. It was very bizarre. I've never done a testing interview. I've done one lunch interview that I didn't realize was a lunch interview. And I don't remember if I've done a phone interview. But if you do a phone interview, it's kind of really helpful because they can't see you. So you get to have a lot of cheat sheets in front of you, like your resume and things like that you could read off while you're talking to them. So answering questions is probably the most nerve-wracking part of a job interview. But if you can stop for one quick second and think about why they might be asking you that question, it might help calm your nerves a little bit. Because sometimes why they're asking you the question is more important than how you answer it. It is completely okay for you to ask them to repeat a question if you didn't hear it, for you to ask them to rephrase it, or for you to ask them for a moment to think. But don't do that on an easy question like, what are your hobbies? Or tell me a little bit about yourself. You shouldn't need time to think on those kinds of questions. And if you ask for time to think on those kinds of questions, it's just going to look a little bizarre. You want to make sure that you don't go off on any tangents when you're answering questions. You don't want to bring up any weaknesses or bad things about yourself if they don't ask for them. And don't talk about anything emotional. So, for example, one of the questions that I had asked a guy during an interview was, who is your hero? And he started talking about his grandmother. So that went off on a long tangent because he talked about his grandmother for about 10 minutes. And then at the end, he revealed that his grandmother had just passed away really close to when the interview was, and he was crying by the end of it, and it was very awkward. So don't touch on things that are going to get you emotional. The thing with answering a question is answer what they've asked and stop. If they want you to elaborate more, they'll ask you to elaborate more. And think about what you're going to say before you say it. You never want to interrupt an interviewer when they're asking you a question. You actually want to take advantage of that time. So listen to them the whole time they're asking a question. And while they're asking, you should be formulating your answer. Take a second and then answer them. So that's how you can buy yourself a little bit of time. If you don't know the answer to something, don't stare at the ceiling. The ceiling does not have the answers. And I'm going to give you some more examples of questions and how to answer them and the rationale in just a little bit. So here are things in an interview you never, ever, ever want to talk about. You never want to talk about your age, your race, your religion, your politics, your sexual orientation, or any disabilities that you might have. The reason for that is because there are discrimination laws in place where someone cannot not hire you because of your age or because of your race or because of your sexual orientation. Those are discrimination laws. So if you tell them this information and then you don't get the job, you opened that door. So if someone asks your age, for instance, maybe they look at your resume and go, oh, so I see you graduated high school in 1982. So how old does that make you? The polite and correct way to answer that question is to say, I don't really feel that my age has any bearing on how well I can do this job. And don't say it like a jerk. You can say it nicely. Sometimes employers will ask those illegal questions on purpose just to see if you will have the guts to be honest and stand up to them like that. And actually, I admire people more who do that than people who go, oh, I'm 24. Because, you got to show some moxie. Do not ever mention your children. Not at a first interview. They can be brought up later if they need to be. If someone asks you if you have children, again, you can say, I don't really feel that has any bearing on how well I can do my job. Because I'm always on time, I'm very reliable. Turn it into a way to sell yourself without actually answering the question. Sometimes when a common question is for you to be asked, tell me a little bit about yourself. And immediately people say, well, I have 4 children, and I have a spouse, and I like long walks on the beach, and I grow weird plants in my basement. No, that's not how to answer that. We'll talk about how to answer that. You never, ever, 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 ever talk about money, benefits, time off, if you're going to get reimbursed for continuing education, professional development, nothing that has to do with money on a first interview, because then it looks like you're just there for the money. It's an unspoken, no kidding, that everybody knows everybody needs money. We all get it. So you don't have to bring it up in the first interview. If you do, then it looks like that's the only reason that you're there. And you want your passion for the position to come through, not the fact that you need money, which we all know anyway. Those are things that usually come up at a second or a third interview. Now, sometimes the interviewer will bring it up at a first interview and say, what kind of salary are you looking for? There's a couple ways to handle this. One is you can say that something that would maintain my current lifestyle, but my salary is negotiable. If they push and say, well, what does that mean? Then you should know how much people are making in your area. So if an LPN is making somewhere between, I have no idea, but this is where your research comes in. But if an LPN is making $12 to $16 an hour, let's say, your range, you're going to say, is $14 to $16. So even if they lowball you at $13, you're still making more than the bottom of the range. And you would just say, well, my research shows that LPNs in this area make an average of $14 to $16 an hour, but my salary is negotiable. The most awesome response I have ever gotten to this question was actually from a nursing student doing a mock interview. And when I pushed on salary, she said, I think that this would be something that would be better spoken about at my future interview, or when I am hired. It came across confident. It was a perfect way to dodge the bullet. She really did a great job when she said that, and now she is part of the PowerPoint. Also, don't mention how far away you live, because now someone's going to bring up, well, does that mean you can't come in when it's snowing? Are you going to call off a lot because it's a big commute? Stuff like that. So these are just some other do nots. which we already talked about. Notice how they're all sitting, hands on lap, feet flat on the floor, legs together as much as possible, and straight back straight. It's really uncomfortable. Okay, so at the end of the interview, 90-some% of interviews always end with, do you have any questions for us? You always want to say yes. And you want to go into an interview with 15 questions already prepared. Write them down, have them in your folder. Don't attempt to memorize them. I had a student once in a mock interview who had memorized her questions, but because of her nerves, couldn't remember the questions, and there was just this big dead silence. So it's totally okay to have them written down and for you to open your folder and, read from your list of questions. That's fine. If there's a way to integrate some of these questions during the interview as well, feel free to. You don't have to just wait until the end. And in a slide or two, I'm going to show you some good questions to ask. To be honest with you, most of the time you're not going to really care about the answers to some of the questions that you ask, but the more intelligent of a question that you ask, the better it makes you look, and it's impressive. This is also a very good time for you to ask for the interviewers' names and spellings and titles for when you write your thank you letter. Don't ever ask how the interview went. It's very bizarre. When someone goes, so, how did I do? They're like, you have any questions for me? Yes, I do. How did I do? Just don't ask that. Go with the questions I'm going to give you right now. Okay, so, many of these are duplicates, so you might want to listen and pause and listen and pause and listen and pause through this slide, because you may totally steal these questions. Let's start over here in this blue one. All of these are really good questions. Number 7 you might not want to ask, because if they ask you to rephrase it, you might not know how to. But all of these are really good questions. Asking how your performance is going to be measured is always a really good question to ask. So these are good to write down. 7's kind of whatever. Let's move down to this black box. Again, some of these are repeats or rewordings of the ones that are over here. Asking why your company is different from the competitors, I don't think that's a very good question. You can give it a shot, see what kind of response you get, but it's a little weird. This question is fantastic. What qualities do you look for in new hires? So basically you're asking them, what are you looking for in me? And you can be thinking, oh yeah, I have that, I have that, I have that. In this white box, don't look at, which is this one. None of these are good about how to get the job. That's just bad. Asking questions to the interviewer about them can be good. Why do you like it here? Why do you decide to come back every day? What are some challenges you face? Where do you see the company in a couple years? That's what's in this column. This is a really good question. What type of people are successful here? What qualities do they have? And you can be incorporating the research that you've done on the company into these questions as well. Now let's go over to the color-coded one. From yellow down are good questions. Especially this one's fantastic. This pink one. What do other people, what do other new hires, what are some of the challenges that they face? Let's talk about this top one. This top one is a very loaded question. Is there any reason why you wouldn't hire me? Some people who are brave choose to ask it. Some do not, because the thing is that if you don't want the answer, don't ask the question. But some people look at it as, if I know your reservations about me, since I'm here with you right now, I have a chance to kind of dispel some of them. So, for example, some of you might be worried that the fact that you're just graduating might be viewed as a disadvantage. You can flip that into an advantage. And explain to them that, even while you are just graduating, you do have 1,600 hours of clinical hours, or 900 dental hygiene clinical hours, or whatever. And because you've never worked anywhere else, you're not set in your own ways, so the facility has the ability to kind of train you and mold you whatever way they want. That's a great selling point for someone who's just out of school. But be very careful if you ask that question, because you might get a response you don't like. Now, if you notice, every single question that's on here is open-ended, which means that the answer is not just a yes or a no. It actually requires the interviewer to speak a little bit. So if you ask a yes or a no question, that's the kind of response you're going to get. So if you just say, is there professional development in this company? And I just say, yes. Well, I'm not going to elaborate. So feel free to copy all, whatever of these questions, the ones that you like, rephrase them however you want, but keep them open-ended. So these are ones that you could use, and there's definitely more than 15 here to help you with your list. Okay, so here are some overall things you do not want to do in a job interview. You don't want to chew gum, look sloppy, we talk about money, be rude, forget to shake their hands, use their portfolio. We've talked about all of these. The only thing we haven't talked about is crying, puking, or pooping yourself. I have had 3 people cry during an interview, 1 come very, very close. I've had 1 person run out of the room to go throw up. I've never had anybody soil themselves during an interview that I know of, so I really hope that that statistic stays that way. But you can overcome your own nerves. It's going to be okay. It just takes practice. So here's another picture from Google that I stole of the 6 most common blunders. Again, your phone should be away and off so you're not answering a phone call. If you're not interested in the job, you shouldn't be on the interview. So appearing disinterested is really common. There's some people who, when they answer questions, their confidence comes across as being arrogant and like they don't care. Make sure people see that warm side of you. And that's one thing that really helps with these mock interviews, is because I know you, I can see how differently you interview if you interview differently. There's a lot of you where the trend is that you have fantastic, amazing personalities, and then you get into the job interview and the personality completely goes away, and that would have really enhanced the interview. So that's one advantage to doing this exercise with you guys. Okay, so the interview's over. Typically, the person who interviewed you, someone will walk you at least to the door. Sometimes they'll walk you all the way out. If they walk you all the way out, then there will be more small talk about how much you've enjoyed meeting them. You look forward to working with them. Those are the kinds of things that you say during that small talk. Shake everybody's hand before you leave. Thank everybody before you leave. And make sure that you write and send that thank you letter. Look, it's the end of the PowerPoint. Aren't you so excited? Okay, so I have a couple other things to show you, just to help you out a little bit. Hi, puppies. These are my German Shepherds. This was Kobe. He passed away, so this is Bear. He's our new one. Okay, so these are some things that people say they wish they knew before they went on a job interview, which is basically the whole point of making you listen to this spiel, is to get you ready for stuff before you go. So this apparently was done from a survey of 2,000 bosses, and of that, 33% of them said they knew within the first 90 seconds if they were going to hire someone or not. Now, when I interview someone, I put you into categories in my head of, oh my god, I would hire immediately, hells no, or maybe come back for a second interview, because sometimes you give someone the benefit of the doubt. Typical interviews are about 40 minutes. The longest interview I was on was 3 hours. It was so bizarre. It started as a one-on-one interview, then it turned into a panel interview, then it turned into a working interview, and it was for a newspaper, and the part of the working interview was they had me design the front page. And here is where research would have been fantastic for me, because it turns out it was the day before's front page, and I didn't look at the paper, so I didn't know what the front page looked like, didn't know it was information from the day before, so I designed it a completely different way. And I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing. They offered me the job, though. So, down this side are some of the most common mistakes that people make. So, playing with your hair, touching your face, not having any knowledge of the company. So you have to do your research. I had a woman in the job interview and we got to the part of, do you have any questions? And she said, yes, what specialties are in your office? And I said, well, if you walk out to our front door, they're written on the front door underneath the physicians' names. And she actually got up and went out and looked at the front door. And I was just being sarcastic, kind of, because it was totally obvious and it was something she should have known. She did not get hired. Not making eye contact. Some people, when they're nervous, they look everywhere else except the people talking to them. And we can see that. It's like, ladies, you know when a guy is looking at your chest instead of at your eyes? Yeah, we know that. Not smiling, bad posture, crossing your arms, too many hand gestures, a weak handshake, and fidgeting too much are the other ones. People are going to gather a lot from you. Not just, stop doing that. 7% of what people, the impact you have on people is from what you actually say. The rest of it is from your tone of voice, how you speak, how eloquent you are, which means how well you use grammar and things like that. And it's how you dress, how you act, your handshake, all of those kinds of things. Let's look at the top 10 most common. We've talked about quite a bit of them, so the ones that we didn't talk about are explaining why you left your last job or bashing your last job. Now, you guys have a really good advantage about why you decided to leave your last job, because you're in school now, so you can say that it was to pursue your education, to pursue your real passion, something to that effect. Not being interested, not knowing enough about the company, going in with no preparation whatsoever, and not taking the opportunity to really sell yourself. Okay, so we're done with that picture. These are the top 10 interview mistakes, and again, some of them are a little repetitive to what we already talked about. So appearing disinterested, using your phone, dressing inappropriately, fumbling with questions. So when someone asks you a question and you give them an answer that has nothing to do with anything, you can tell that they're just not concentrating. And that goes along with being disinterested, or they're not listening. Bashing current or previous employees. Lying. That's a problem. And not following up. So this is the reason why I'm forcing you to do a thank you letter, even though it's just one more thing that you guys have to do. It actually is really beneficial for you when you get out into the work world. Where's my interview? I have one that I want to show you that is interview etiquette that I thought I had pulled up. Sorry. Here we go. But this one talks about what to do if you're... I think this is the one that talks about the meals. Oh, that's too big! Okay, so everybody's talking about do research, have a great resume, and be on time. So we can skip that stuff. This is if you're interviewing in an office. Do not, out of respect, call someone Mr. or Ms. Never call them by their first name. Don't talk about money. Be polite. We talked about all this already. Oh, my stupid touchscreen is going bananas here. Here we go. This is if you're doing an interview at a dinner. And just in case you end up doing a lunch interview, this is why I wanted to show you this. You absolutely are not drinking alcohol at all. Stick to water. No soda, because that might make you burp. If you order food, you are going to pick something that you can cut up and eat, like chicken fingers or something like that. And you want to end up doing really, really small pieces so that you could chew, swallow, and speak quickly. You never want to talk with your mouth full. Be careful of what you order. You want to pick something that's cheap. Even if you're starving, pick something little, and when the interview's over, stop at McDonald's. But the bill is always the weird question. This says offering payment would be inappropriate because you were invited to the job interview. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, personally. That the bill is the sticky situation a little bit. I might actually, when bill comes, usually they set the bill at the middle of the table. If the other person grabs it, just ask what your contribution can be. And they, if they say nothing, fine. Again, post-interview, you're sending a thank you note. See, I'm not off my rocker. People actually tell you to do this. The other thing that we didn't talk about is do not put anything on social media about your interview at all. Don't put it on Facebook, don't put it on Twitter, nothing. You have to wait until you get the job before you can announce anything, because people can find that stuff. Okay, let me get through these interview questions. Oh, there was the interview etiquette. Whoops. Let's do the interview questions real quick, and then I have a couple videos to show you that you can choose to watch or not watch, but they're kind of funny, so it'll ease things a little bit, and you can stop listening to my voice. Let's look at the logic behind... Oh, no, I don't like this one. That one's not very good. Let's do this one. So, this one I think I stole off Pinterest. And it's what you're asked and what they really want to know. So, tell me a little bit about yourself. This is I hope you could see this. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Telling me a little bit about yourself. That is the most common first question to a job interview. So, the way to answer this question is to retell your resume. Currently, I am a student at Fortis Institute, and I will be graduating in such and such with a degree in blah, 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 and hope to be working in the field very soon. Now, speaking of hoping to be working in the field very soon, you want to go into a job interview knowing exactly when you'll be ready to work without having to do the math during the job interview. So, for example, what I mean by this is whether you're graduating from the nursing or the hygiene program, once you graduate from here, that does not mean you are a hygienist or a nurse. You have to take your boards and stuff like that. So let's say, hypothetically, you graduate in October. And you graduate in October, you have to take your boards, then so you're going to take your boards in November. It takes 6 weeks to get the information, the results back. So you'll be ready to work and available to work by the end of December, early January. And that's an answer you want to give them without having to actually talk through all of that. So when someone says, when would you be available to work? You can say, probably early January by the time I receive my board scores, or something like that. That's what you're shooting for. So again, you just want to know your resume well enough so that you can tell them, I'm a student currently going to school here. For this, I will be graduating here. So you kind of just regurgitate your resume. As far as why are you interested in working here, I asked this question of someone once, and their response was, yeah, I'm really not. And it almost made me want to stop the interview right then and there. So you should have a reason why, about what it is about the company that makes you actually want to be there or work there. They just want to see if you're there for a paycheck or if you actually have some passion towards the company or interest in that facility itself. Two of the most common questions that you're also going to be asked are your strengths and your weaknesses. For both of these, well, especially your strengths, it would be great to give an example. So are you a really good people person? Are you a problem solver? Are you great working in a team? Something like that. So basically, if you tell me what you're good at, that tells me how much I'm going to need to kind of watch over you. Now, your weaknesses. This is always one that people usually trip up on a little bit, is how do I answer that? Basically, to answer what your weakness is, take a good thing and take it to the extreme. So I have a tendency to be too organized or too thorough. No matter what you say to what your greatest weakness is, at the end of it, you should always say, but I'm working on improving it, but I'm working on it, but I'm working on it. That shows that you're still trying to develop who you are. Why should we hire you? This is to see whether you could really sell yourself or not. And sometimes this question might come in the form of, why should we hire you over someone else? Why do you think you're the best candidate for the job? And that's where we want to see if you can sell yourself. You have no idea how many other people they have seen so far, and you want to say something that's really going to set yourself apart, whether that's how much passion you have for the field or whatever the case may be. What are some of your hobbies? Stick to things that are legal. You might get questions like this sometimes that are kind of situational. So, tell me about a time when you faced a lot of stress in your job and how you handled it. Or, okay, well, I don't know what that just was. Motion swiping? I don't know. Where were we? Down here. Tell me when you were really stressed and how you handled it. Tell me about when you had an angry customer and how you handled it. What someone is looking for with those questions is what you learned from the situation and how you were able to handle the situation. Because every job in healthcare has an element of thinking on their feet. So can you think on your feet and resolve a problem? Or are you going to go tattletale constantly and have someone else fix the problem for you? The other ones we already talked about, so we can get rid of this picture. This looks scarier than it is. These are some common interview questions. Now, I stole this off Pinterest, so if you would like to find this yourself, here you go. We already talked about this one. We talked about this one. We talked about weaknesses. We already talked about why did you leave your last job. Do not ever bash your previous job. Again, the easiest reason for you guys to say is that you wanted to further your education. Pow. Number 6 is going to be really common because it's going to see if you know, if you did any research on the company prior to getting there. And that's actually what this little bubble says. And people are going to test you on that research, trust me. Instead of number 8, sometimes people will ask, what do you consider your greatest failure? And sometimes people don't know how to answer that. But people will ask you that because they want to see, first of all, what your definition of failure is, how you handled it, and what you learned from it. So it's all about how did you grow in that capacity. Oh, number 11 is really common. How long would you expect to work for us if you're hired? The reason they're asking is because they kind of want to get a feel for if you're considering them a stepping stone job and you're going to leave after a year, or if you really care and you want to make that a permanent home. So you could be cutesy here and say, you know, as long as you'll have me. But, you know, another way to answer this is as long as both of us feel satisfied or something like that. Sometimes someone might ask, instead of number 14, someone might ask you, do you feel that you work better as a leader or in a team? Your answer is going to be both. Anytime someone asks you if you're a team player, the answer is absolutely always yes. If someone asks, 16 is quite common. What position do you prefer? I asked this of someone, and they said, well, I always end up leading the project, because they were trying to enforce how great they are as a leader, but it just came out really cocky. So you can say, I am willing to work in any capacity that the team feels they need. That makes you look flexible, and it makes you look available, and makes it look like you're willing to do anything to help. Number 20, if you know what your letters of recommendation say, this is a really good place to demonstrate how well you know your portfolio. I have never asked number 22, but if number 22 is asked of you, rely on how much clinical experience you have already done as a student here, whether during LPN you've gone out on your clinicals, as an EFTA, whether you've gone out on your externship, or as a hygienist working in the clinic here at school. That's what you want to rely on, and say that you don't have a lack of experience because look at all the experience you've gained and you look forward to learning more. 27 is common. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Part of the question is to see if you actually want to be with the company still, and part of it is to see if you have any ambition. So maybe you might say you want to further your education. This is not the type of question to say, well, I hope I'm married with 4 children. That's not the answer that you want to give. 33 is a trick. What do you think of the last company you worked for? You never, ever, 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 ever want to say anything negative, and that's what they want to set you up for. Basically, the safest answer is that you can say, the last company was an amazing place for me to grow and develop my skills with customers, with patients, whatever the job was. But you want to look at how you grew in that position. That's your safest way to answer that. But again, this is on Pinterest if you want to look for it. There's a ton of them on Pinterest if you just look up interview questions, and that's where I stole that one from. Okay. Everybody take a nice, big, deep breath. I have a couple videos to show you. Hopefully they will make you laugh. If for some reason this video cuts off, I just want you to know that if you don't want to watch the videos that are coming up, the videos are the end of this, so you can stop now and not watch the video clips. But regardless, whether you watch the video clips or whether you don't, I want you to know that I'm here for you. I'm here to constructively help you, and even after you graduate, it might be some time before you go on a real interview. If you want to come back and do another mock interview, I am absolutely here to help you. But, you know, I just want to see you employed just like you guys do. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to